when a light bulb goes on, that speaks of creative insight. Okay, and then building on that, you get more insight and more insight. How many of you know people who have this ability to see what other people don't see? They come up with ideas that nobody thought of. Well, where did that come from? They see things in ways that most of us don't see. Kind of reminds me of those three-dimensional pictures that you stare at. And you try to, it's supposed to be this three-dimensional image of the Empire State Building or something, and you're staring at it, and you can't get anything to come out of it. And they say, yeah, you just look at it, focus behind the picture. So, what do you mean behind the picture? How many of you ever done that and you never saw the Empire State Building or whatever it was you were supposed to say? Some people would look at it and say, oh yeah, I see it. They sort of come up with unique combinations of things that you would never have thought. They see things that you overlooked. They see at a glance the opportunities in a particular situation or terrain that the rest of us completely miss. Now, some do a few more. While some of us are thinking analytically, other people are doing things actively. This would be a knack for activism. Some people have a strong sense of justice that compels them to speak out and to do something about injustice in society and so on. And they champion causes, challenge the system, catalyze action, and they have a great ability to do that. And they make the rest of us feel like, because there's the butterfly in South Africa that's almost extinct. And how can you just sit there and do nothing about it? Okay, what should I do? I know, I'll think about it. I'll seek to find some direction. But some people, that's their natural orientation. Now, I used to be threatened sometimes by people who have different orientations than me. It's like, they would say, well, you need to do this. And you're a pastor, you get every different organization, everybody's gift. You ought to be doing evangelism more. You ought to be marching on town hall. You ought to be whatever. And I've learned to say, God has given that to you. I appreciate what God has given to you, and we'll see how we can work things together to utilize that gift in God's purpose. Now we're going to move the thinker back. Now this is the original type of bicycle. Whoever thought of it was brilliant to come up with that idea. But it's not, I can't imagine today, it was you had to be quite acrobatic to be able to maintain your balance on these. Somebody came along and said, I can improve on that. And so they came along and with a whole new design. How many of you know some people are not creators, but they have an amazing ability to say, that could be done a lot better this way. They improve things. They're always looking for ways to improve on what others have done. That just comes naturally to them. They're not necessarily inventors, but they have a knack for finding ways of improving things or using them in new and different ways. Let me give you one more. This is a pith helmet. That's it. Which speaks of exploring, trailblazing. Some people tackle a challenge, and once they've basically solved that challenge, they're restless to move on to new challenges. I never thought of restlessness as a gift from God, but very often it is. When we first started the church here 20 years ago, I wasn't sure if God's call was to establish a work here so that I can move on to a new challenge and start a new church and get that established enough so I can move on to establish a new church, or whether God was calling me to a pastoral role. Well, 20 years I've been here, so that'll give you an idea of which way that went. I felt like God was calling me here, and out of this, God can initiate other ministries. But some people thrive on new challenges. Their continuing mission is to explore new horizons and new frontiers, seek out new challenges and new opportunities, and boldly go where no one has gone before. Now, there are all of these different kinds of gifts. Some have a knack for motivating people. They are inspirational, dynamic, charismatic, persuasive. They get everyone shouting and amening and clapping and jumping, just like I do when I get up here on Sunday morning. Actually, if I get one or two amens, I'm doing good. But some people are contagious with their inspiration. Some people network behind the scenes. Some people thrive in the spotlight. Some people have an amazing gift of diplomacy. They can diffuse conflicts, find common ground, negotiate peace. Some people have a tremendous ability to manage people in such a way that the people are motivated to tackle and accomplish goals. And some people are visionary, entrepreneurial, empire builders, and they usually become pastors of mega churches or something. All of us have our own gifts. In fact, it may be a spiritual gift, it may be a natural talent, it may be a personality trait, it may be a thinking orientation, it may be a relational skill, it may be a ministry passion, it may be a ministry style. I don't think it really matters. Only the thinker would worry about whether this is a spiritual gift or is it a natural talent or is it a ministry orientation. Well, if God has put that in you, then let God use that. And it all comes from the hand of God and is part of our unique God-given design. As Paul said in Romans 11:36, everything comes from Him. Everything exists by His power and is intended for His glory. To Him be the glory forever. Amen. And that sums it up. It all comes from God, and God works it in us so that we can return the glory back to Him. Let me give you the third one. The third qualification for ministry is after you got to be you got to unpack your sack, and then you got to do something with it. You unpack your sack, and these are the things that God has given you to make a difference for Him. Then we need to do something with it. Now again, I realize this is not going to this message is not going to find its way in the top 10 most profound messages I have ever preached. But my purpose is not to give some deep, profound truth. My purpose is for us to come away saying, I have the wonderful privilege of partaking, being a partner with God in the outworking of his purpose in my life and in the church and in the world. And how can I come to experience that joy? Once you identify what's in your knapsack, then you need to begin to do something with it. Now, great opportunities to serve God seldom come, but little opportunities to bless others and to serve God surround us all every day. We wait until we get this big major opportunity. Bill Hybels asked us to come and speak at the Willow Creek Summit. Well, don't hold your breath. But we have opportunities all the time to use what God has given to us. You may never pastor a church, you may never sing before huge crowds, but you can give a ride, you can help in a nursery, welcome a visitor, cook a meal, call someone to encourage them. Someone made this little poem. It said, Moses had a staff. Now, Moses was a shepherd, and he had been a shepherd for 40 years. And the staff of a shepherd was used for many purposes, and not the least of which was to fight off wild animals. And so this staff, in a experienced shepherd's hand, was like those weapons in a ninja that ninja uses. You know, it's got and does all these amazing things. Well, the shepherd, their staff was their primary tool, which they used. And God said, you know, that is an extension of your shepherding. He said, what's that in your hand? He said, well, I've got staff. And God used that to accomplish his purpose. How many of you know David was an expert slingshotist or whatever, sling shooter? He was from Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin, and the tribe of Benjamin in particular was known for their slingshot abilities, and the tribe of Judah as well. It was a major part of warfare. You had your archers, you had your sword, your cavalry, and you had your slingers, or whatever they call a sling shooter. And they were experts with that. Well, David, the one thing that David was really good at was the slingshot. So God used that to defeat Goliath. Well, somebody said this: Moses had a staff, David had a sling, Samson had a jawbone, Rahab had a string. Mary had some ointment, Aaron had a rod, Dorcas had a needle, but all were used by God. What do you have in your hand? What is your slingshot? What is your staff? What does God want to use in your life? There is an incredible joy to know that God has used you to change someone's destiny, to change someone's life, to minister the grace of God, to touch a person's life in a way only God can do. And he used you as a channel to do that. That's a tremendous privilege.